July 2019 marked the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 mission that landed man on the moon, and I got very into all the content that was released to commemorate the event. I watched HBO's re-release of From the Earth to the Moon, a mini-series from the 90s that tells the story of the entire US space program. I saw Apollo 11, the documentary that used recently discovered 70mm footage to tell the story of the first moon landing. I pored over an interactive feature the New York Times released called Apollo 11 as they shot it, and I even played around with Apollo in real time, a tool that recreated every second of 3 Apollo missions using all of the media that was generated during them. But for me, the thing that best recreated the Apollo 11 mission wasn't any of those. It was a game released a month earlier titled Outer Wilds. Now, to be clear, Outer Wilds is not actually about the Apollo missions. It's a game where you play as an alien astronaut and you explore this wild solar system full of strange and unique planets. But through that fictional scenario, the game conveys all of the drama and adventure and discovery of real-world space travel better than any of the non-fiction works I experienced. And in the end, it even ventures into the territory of 2001: A Space Odyssey and explains why we feel compelled to explore the final frontier. It decodes that wonder that kept the entire world glued to their television screens as Armstrong and Aldrin landed on the moon. Outer Wilds is broken into 2 main parts, 2, if I can borrow the phrase, game flavors: spaceflight and exploration. Let's start with spaceflight. When Outer Wilds begins, you go through about 30 minutes of exposition and well-concealed tutorials as you make your way through a town on your way to get the launch codes for your ship. This brief period introduces you to everything that's known about your universe and where the gaps in that knowledge are. But after you get the launch codes, and something else happens that I'm not going to spoil here, you make your way to your ship and take off for the first time. And this is when you learn that the spaceflight element in this game is a surprisingly comprehensive distillation of real space travel. All the real-world phases of spaceflight are presented in a way that conveys the emotion of each one. You've got the takeoff phase, where the awe-inspiring power required to propel a spacecraft through the atmosphere is represented with the sound effects of the thrusters firing and the long push you make through the sky. Then you've got the moment where you escape your planet's gravitational pull and you experience weightlessness, which is subtly represented by just this little bob your screen makes. But it's really heightened and made beautiful through the music cue that accompanies it. Then you've got the slow journey phase where you make your way to your destination, followed by the tense landing phase where you must delicately manipulate your controls and put your ship down in a good spot. Then, finally, you have the phase where you feel the immense relief of hearing your ship touch down safely. Or not. I've heard some people say that the flying in this game can be frustrating, and I agree, it can be. But the elements that make it frustrating are also what make it such a great representation of real space travel. Traveling in this game is not just about getting from point A to point B. It's about creating a simple, interactive representation of how difficult it is to navigate through space. It's not needlessly frustrating or unmotivated like some challenges in games can be. It's frustrating because it's trying to resemble the real thing, and the real thing is hard. As the people who have done it say,
Roger, this trip of ours to the moon may have looked to you simple or easy. I'd like to assure you that that has not been the case.
Once you do get where you're trying to go, then you enter into the exploration part of the game. This part consists of a combination of environmental storytelling and some very light traversal challenges. You walk around the planets in your solar system, take in what you see, and make discoveries. You have a couple different tools to help you out with this, including a signal scope that can trace down the origin of different sounds emanating from different places across your solar system, a scout device that can travel ahead of you and warn you about potential danger areas, and a translator that can decode the writings of the Nomai, a mysterious race of creatures that went extinct a long time ago. One of the things that makes this game unique is that these tools are the only things that are going to tell you where you should go. There's no set path in this game, no arrow or objective marker telling you where to go. And as you quickly learn after exploring for a little while, there's also nothing that's truly locked away until you accomplish a certain goal or get a key. Everything is open and accessible from the moment you start this game. The only thing that's restricting your access to certain areas is your knowledge of how to get there. There is a computer on your ship that helps you record and organize the things you've seen, and it tells you if there's something else to discover in a certain area, but all of the connections that will quote-unquote unlock new areas for you are really happening in your mind. You're not getting a key card or watching a cutscene where a door opens. And the effect of this dynamic is that it feels like you're actually discovering things and not just playing a part in a preordained script. Yes, the game is, in a way, subtly guiding you along to different points where it wants you to go, but it doesn't feel like that. It feels like you really are exploring and discovering and learning as you go along. It makes your unique process of discovery the story, and that makes you feel like you really are doing the work and not just miming along to what the game wants you to do. A lot of this process is motivated by simple curiosity, but the thing that ignites that curiosity is the 22-minute time loop. And I know, it's taken me a really long time to get to the 22-minute time loop, especially when so many people mention it right up front, but that's because it really is a surprisingly minor element of the game. Yes, in Outer Wilds, every 22 minutes, the sun of your solar system will go supernova and explode, and you'll be right back at the beginning of the game. And that's the thing that makes you think, why is this happening? Or how can I stop this? But once you're deep into exploring the planets, the questions become bigger and more philosophical. This is when the game begins to explain why we explore. We begin to see that the discoveries we're making are beginning to answer the questions of where we came from and how we got here. And that process eventually culminates in an abstract endgame scene that maybe doesn't answer those questions, but it definitely provides that profound feeling that answering those questions would provide. The real Apollo missions also began to answer those deep philosophical questions about where we came from and how we got here, but in a more boring and scientific way. In one of the episodes of From the Earth to the Moon, the Apollo 15 crew is made to learn about geology so that they can collect useful rock samples from the moon. And at first, the crew is super bored by this, but then, once they learn the significance of what they're doing, they're all about it. And they end up bringing a rock back to Earth that could date back to the formation of the moon, a rock from an event that predates the creation of humanity by billions of years. But when you look at it, even knowing that context, it's still just a rock. Outer Wilds takes the magnitude of that discovery and translates it emotionally into that final abstract scene. And in a way, that translation is what the entire game does overall. It takes everything about humanity's adventure into space and translates it in a way that's not factually accurate, but emotionally accurate. It's a game that shows you what it must feel like to be in space. I mean, I don't know what it's like to be in space, but I can imagine the fear of venturing into an environment that's extremely perilous, and landing a vehicle in a place no person has ever landed, and making discoveries that could shed light on who we are and where we came from. I can imagine all of that because I've done all of that. I did it when I played Outer Wilds.